You really do have to think, what is my skill set and where is the future going, and who can I talk to find out what the right direction is to be in. Network beyond your immediate group of people. To get promoted in a company, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. In a large bank, when they're looking at managing directors, they actually go outside the region and they ask people, everybody who knows you, and it basically goes beyond your job. You need to go beyond being obsessed with work. Variety is the spice of life. The best companies are the ones that listen to everyone. They always say the person you need to listen to is the person that doesn't speak up in the meetings.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 25. My guest today is Simon Clarke. He's the managing director with Citibank Private Bank, and his career spans 38 years. You know how in the last several years people started to look for more meaning and flexibility, and many are looking for a career change. And in this environment, Simon is someone who has found a balance and purpose, and he enjoys his life and work. Also, he has amassed 57,000 people following on LinkedIn, where he shares financial advice, anecdotes, and career lessons. So I want to ask him and understand how is he doing this in this podcast. And if you find the podcast interesting, please subscribe and leave us a comment. See you in a second. Hi, Simon. I'm so happy that you are a guest in my podcast. How are you today?
I'm extremely well, Annie. It's great to be a guest. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Great. Well, let's dive in. And the first thing I wanted to start this conversation with is that I saw that your bachelor degree is in languages, Spanish and French, and then you started in banking. How was that possible? And was it your wish, or this is something that happened by chance?
Well, first of all, Annie, it was a long, long time ago. And I think in those days, there was no such thing as summer analyst programs or anything, even graduate recruitment programs, or even once you became you got a job, there was no graduate rotation programs. So what I did essentially was I did a degree in Spanish and French, as you say. And before I graduated, I sent a lot of letters out to different institutions. I think it was 35 letters. And I probably got about 5 interviews and got offered 2 jobs. And that was a choice between the Bank of England and Union Bank of Switzerland. So the process was a lot more amateur in those days than it is nowadays. And I think also the competition was more, national than international as it is nowadays. So it wasn't quite a quirk of fate. My logic was I had A-levels from high school in Spanish, French, and maths. And my logic was I was looking for a job which used my skills both in sort of EQ and also in numbers or figures or whatever. So I think it was a sort of iterative process that ended up in banking.
Tell me, you are coaching and mentoring many young people. Is it still possible to start in banking without a finance background? What is the industry actually after in terms of qualities? What are they looking for when they look for new hires?
Yeah, everybody asks me that question. It's actually a very difficult question to answer because I think, first of all, a lot of the elimination process is actually done by AI, which is very unfortunate. If you didn't go to the top 5 universities, the top 10 or whatever, you don't stand a chance. And obviously, COVID's made it extremely difficult because there used to be road shows where banks would go out to universities. And I think there's a deliberate policy, certainly in the UK, to go beyond the obvious top 5 to find talent in other universities. Some jobs, they now use virtually sort of anonymous techniques where they basically blank out people's names, they blank out their CV, they do basically tests to check aptitude to certain things. I am only brought in really at the interviewing stage. So a lot of the screening's been done, but I have to say that it is a bit odd because banking's not necessarily something that can be taught. I know that you can be taught economics and finance, etc. But once you get into financial markets, you really do learn a little bit on the job. So I guess in answer to your question, what I'm looking for, there's a classic saying that people are looking for somebody who can sell to them, somebody that they really like. The test is either somebody that you're stuck with at an airport, or I always use the analogy, if I was to be stuck or be sat next to you at a dinner party for 2 hours, how would I feel? So I actually look for people that are more rounded. When I interview people, I ask the obvious questions, why private banking, why Citibank? And I tend to find that candidates just roll off an answer that's a bit cliche and comes straight from the website or something like that. So personally, I just try and find the real person. I try and not put people off, but I try and ask questions that nobody else is going to ask about other aspects of their life. I dig deep into their CV. I look at their hobbies. I try and find, something that will reveal the real personality behind it. And I think what I'm looking for is people that are they're just hungry to learn. They really want the job. They've done their homework. They generally are polite, inquisitive, just a sharp mind. And you think logically, how will they fit into the organization? Because, different companies are different and different personalities suit different companies. And obviously, there's lots of different roles within banking, for instance. So I think there's lots of different things that candidates always ask me, and I say, well, there's nothing I can teach you, but I know when I see it, sort of thing. So, just be yourself is the main thing, I think.
I guess that one very important quality is to be eager to learn and to be able to change and to be coachable, trainable, because there's so many changes not only in the banking industry, everywhere. What are the new jobs that did not exist 5 years ago, and how should people prepare for those?
Well, I guess banking and I guess the world is being driven by digitalization and by technology. So obviously there are the leading edge parts of technology. So in banking, that would include fintech, robo advisors, this sort of things. But I think that as far as new jobs are concerned, I'm not sure there's anything startlingly new. I do agree with what you say. You do have to be totally adaptable, and you do have to be able to embrace change and move forward. Definitely. I think it's very easy to get left behind. I think of, as an example, electronic trading. Now, there was some resistance in private banking to electronic trading, but as it was when I was in investment banking. But if you think about it logically, the best thing that can happen is when you make money when you're not doing anything. So if people trade online or at night or whatever, and you're making money, that's great. If it takes that side of it away and you've got more time to talk to clients about more strategic elements, then, the whole idea in life is scalability. And obviously, digitalization and electronic trading, etc., gives you scalability. So all of these things, we're all trying to move forward, and generally, digitalization reduces the number of people you need, but a lot of it is getting rid of the back end, getting rid of process. It's looking, as management consultants do, at the whole chain of process and saying, how can we make the process smoother? So I don't think there's anything necessarily new. I think we can see the future of private banking as what's happened to investment banking, i.e., there's what they call soft touch. So bigger clients get more attention, smaller clients get automated, etc. So it's, we are sort of looking at consumer banking and private banking, and consumer banking is generally a bit like trawler fishing. It's essentially it's getting hits on websites, etc. Whereas private banking is a bit more like marlin fishing. We're looking for one person, we're looking for one deal. So, we're just trying to get smarter, I guess, is the main thing.
So, and if somebody is in their mid-career and start thinking about the future, as you said, I mean, things change. What should they plan about, and how should they approach it? What are the skills for instance, which they need to learn? And what are the skills which will always be sought after, in your opinion?
Well, I was lucky enough to change my career mid-career at the age of 37, which I guess is perfectly mid-career. And the advice I would give to people is prepare for it. It happened to me when actually the one time in my career I was actually made redundant. But actually, I was prepared for it. It was after the Russian crisis in 1998, the Asia financial crisis as well. So in 2000, I changed careers. And in fact, because I'd prepared for it, I'd thought about what could I do if this, present job, the gravy train ran out or whatever happened. So I proactively looked at the field I wanted to get into. I studied exams that I would need to get into that field. So if you are going to change career, you need to demonstrate that you are adaptable and that you've looked at this career, that you've done the networking, etc., and that you've done your groundwork. And if possible, you can prove it by doing exams. A lot of people use an MBA. An MBA is probably, depending on whether you're in North America or in Europe, is mid to late 20s or 30 or so. But then there's an EMBA, which people generally do around 40 years old. And all of these things are ways in which you can pivot your career in a different direction. You can get a new network of people and you can get involved. It's not an easy thing to do, I must say. And you're right, you have to think about the future and where things lie. And at the moment, a lot of banks are focusing on private banking, so it's an extremely good area to be in. But a lot of the younger people of my children's age are looking more at different careers, particularly in technology. Has been a very, technology, the big tech shares, obviously they make money in advertising. So there's all the digital marketing and that's a new area. So younger people are adapting, obviously looking at the future, and some aspects, a bit like sort of black and white photography, eventually they completely die out, or, cameras as opposed to camera phones. So you're right. You really do have to think, what is my skill set and where is the future going? And who can I talk to find out what the right direction is to be in?
And what was your career change?
I started off in what broadly is called investment banking, though I'm told that investment banking in the American sense is merely corporate finance. But in the broader sense, investment banking is essentially corporate finance, syndicate sales and trading. So it's actually raising debt and equity and then the secondary trading and sales of those products. So I started off in Eurobond sales, and I did that job for 15 years. And then I switched into becoming a relationship manager in private banking. So the common theme behind them is sales, but in the former, I was essentially selling to institutions, and the latter, I'm obviously selling to individuals. The former, I was actually speaking to specialists in fixed income. So I'm speaking as one expert to another expert at an institution. And then in private banking, you can have different clients of all levels of sophistication, and I guess you go from being a specialist to being a generalist, and in the generalist within the financial world, having been a specialist is a very, very valuable tool, because you can use your expertise in a certain area of financial markets to value other areas. So, if you know about fixed income, then you know about equity. If you know about equity, you know about private equity. If you know about that, you know about hedge funds, etc. So that was my career change, basically, after 15 years.
And when you were speaking before, you said that if you want to make any type of change, you have to think about your network. And you're pretty good in creating and managing networks, because you've created a great personal brand on LinkedIn. You have around 50,000 followers, which is huge. And you're a Luminary 2022. So why is personal brand so important these days, especially?
Well, I think it is very, very important. And I guess I'll start with the personal brand in your own company. I would actually recommend everyone read a book by our friend Eric Sim. because his book is very good at teaching. I think it's called Little Steps or something. It's very good at teaching you how to succeed in a company. Basically, you need to stand out. You need to have your own speciality, etc., to succeed. Now, to me, I think it's very important that you network beyond your immediate group of people. To get promoted in a company, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And that's very apparent, for instance, in a large bank. When they're looking at managing directors, they actually go outside the region and they ask people, everybody who knows you, and it basically goes beyond your job. It becomes more of a sort of symbolic or a titled role. Now, as far as personal branding on social media is concerned, I actually did it as a little bit of a hobby to start with. I think I enjoy writing. I imagine my target audience, which is generally people of my children's age in their 20s, people that are trying to get on the job ladder. Any way you can help them. There's a great American expression, send the elevator back down. Any way you can help these young people is fantastic. I mean, behind the scenes, I get a lot of direct messaging, which I try to reply to every single message. And, if any word of encouragement or any piece of advice is useful to people, and then obviously there are people who I've actually helped, get jobs. There are people at Citibank who joined because they contacted me originally. But the truth is that I actually enjoy writing. The second audience, I guess, is more experienced people. And I think when you've had a long career, there are many, many anecdotes and, as somebody described them, vignettes, which can actually really either make people laugh or realize that, no career is a straight line. There are crashes and there are, different bosses, and as a friend of mine says, a career is definitely a marathon. It's not a sprint. And it really is a question of surviving the years, and thriving is actually very difficult. So if I can help people in any way, I don't use social media really to lift my own brand. Although I have met some incredible people, including yourself, really, although you worked at Citi, through my LinkedIn. So, that is great. And I think it really helps that, a senior person at a bank can actually be approachable. And I think that has helped a lot of people. And I think that, hopefully my LinkedIn posts, etc., encourage young people. And, I'm there to help, really.
But you said that you developed your LinkedIn, your network and your profile on LinkedIn while still working. But a lot of people, they complain about corporate standards and limitations when it comes to posting online. So how did you do it? What is your advice? What should people who continue to work in large organizations do so they can start on LinkedIn and create this personal brand?
Well, for a start, I don't think you should encounter problems. I think that the first thing to do is actually read the company policy on this, because, I read it again recently. And the main thing is you cannot be seen to represent your employer. If you do, then you need to obviously have approval for every post. You need to have sometimes press training and all sorts of other things. So if you are literally posting on behalf of a company, that's what you do. But I know the people in corporate communications extremely well. And if there's any area of doubt, I check with them. So I will ask them, look, I've been asked to do this podcast. Are you okay with me doing it? So I get their approval to do it. But the main thing is obviously to find out what the corporate policy is, and essentially engage with the people that are involved with putting the policy together, to make sure that if you're following the guidelines. And essentially, it is you acting as an individual and not representing the company you work for.
Where do you draw inspiration? How do you plan all your posts on LinkedIn?
Well, I think one thing is if I have a thought, I put it in my phone, so I have a notes section, and I probably got 2 or 3 ideas that are there ready. And I guess I either think of them just, somebody says something to me or somebody asks me a question on LinkedIn. And I think the best thing I can do is tell everyone about that, because everyone's asking that question. So why don't I reply to everyone? I've actually, since COVID, I've learned 3 new habits actually, or 3 new skills. One habit was that I learned to trade options with our friend Simon Ree in Singapore. The second one was I learned to play bridge, which has been very interesting. But the third one is I actually go for a morning walk, and I listen to a UK program called Desert Island Discs. And so I go for a 40-minute walk. And this Desert Island Disc essentially is their guest basically picks 8 songs that they would take onto a desert island, and it talks about their life story as well. And I often find that walking through nature in the morning, that something will come to me, or standing in the shower or whatever. But I often think young people, as I say, ask me a question, and it's sometimes, it's a question which I have to think hard about. And I think if I have to think hard about it, then there must be a lot of people who are interested in knowing the reply to it. So it's really, I guess the theme is trying to help young people, and or anecdotes in my career. I actually posted yesterday, I heard, and this is a totally true story. Somebody told me about somebody I knew getting divorced, and I was really saddened because it was somebody I'd worked with. And I thought this sort of thing, you need to have a human touch when you post as well. You're not a robot. In fact, several people have asked me that question. How do you come up with so many? Do you have a ghostwriter? Or, and I literally go, no, it's me. So, I don't know whether it ends up in a book, but there is a sort of logic. But it's I try to, I mean, some are quite market focused. So for a layman would not necessarily make much sense. Like I might talk about the S&P trading sideways, or I don't know, the dollar being at all-time highs or stuff like that. But other is, as I say, helping young people with career advice. I recently did a series of interviews and asked the person at the end, do you have any questions for the managing director of a private bank? And he said no. And I was completely stunned because, and I put
How can that be?
Well, I put on the post, I'll give you a clue. If you do that, then you're not going to get a job, because this is your one chance at asking. And okay, you might be a cliche question, but hopefully you have something which is, well thought out and reasoned, etc. So they come easily. And I think we were just talking earlier, but the way that LinkedIn works is essentially, if you are very successful, then the AI, the sort of algorithm, attracts more people. So, I've had posts. Well, I had one post that had 790,000 views, and actually shared one, just something that was actually a joke about LinkedIn, but it got 5.25 million views. So once the algorithm gets going and people share, then it just goes viral, basically. But now, as I mentioned earlier, if you do want to follow somebody on LinkedIn, instead of just by random catching one of them all popular posts, you can just look at their profile and press the bell, and it means that you'll get to see every one of their posts.
No, absolutely. That's a very nice new feature. Let's jump now to a question I wanted to ask you for a long time, and it's related to, these days people generally are looking for more meaning and flexibility. And many people in their late careers, even mid careers, are thinking of, what can I do? What else can I do? And they're looking for a change. But you seem to have found the right balance, and you seem completely content and happy in what you're doing, without any kind of wish to do something different. So how do you achieve this? What should people do to feel the same way you feel?
That's a very good question. I had this discussion with a client actually, and my client is a lawyer in Hong Kong who's 70 years old. And he said about his career, he is just so lucky. He's met so many interesting people. And I said, well, look, I am so lucky because I have you as a client, and I have your friends as clients. And therefore, I'm in a really good place. And I think I'm extremely, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I'm very good at my job. So I know that I've got a process which is repeatable. One of my recent posts was about how do you overcome this 7-year cycle in a career where typically what people do is they work for 3 or 4 years, they plateau, they find another job, and they move on and they get a pay rise, and then they keep on doing it every single 7 years. But I think that there are a lot of jobs which are very, very specialized. I mean, you look at, say, I don't know, in Japan, a sushi maker or something like that. For it, the apprenticeship is sort of 2 years or whatever. So to some people, you can look from outside and say, oh, this is incredibly boring what you do. But actually, I remember a friend of mine once saying when you have children should never be bored. They have an imagination. And I'm the same way. There's always, so I have a fantastic group of clients. I have people that I'm trying to sign up as clients. And then there's just general networking, which, frankly, I enjoyed speaking to strangers. And actually, one thing I did realize was that you need to go beyond being obsessed with work. I always look for very rounded individuals. And so, if I think about this weekend, I went to see the Nutcracker at the ballet. I watched the Soccer World Cup with a whole load of Finnish people. So, I think variety is the spice of life. And I think you're right. A lot of people are COVID has made people question the norm, especially commuting and working from home and this sort of thing, and the relationship that they have with their team members. But I think that it's right to question those sort of things. And I think that technology really, it's incredible how technology and medicine turned what was potentially a fatal virus for the whole planet into something which a lot of people learned a lot of lessons out of. So I think when you are in mid-career, definitely look ahead. I mean, I had a coffee with an ex-boss, and we had a fascinating chat about what he was doing now he'd left the business. So you never in life want to sort of run up to a crossroads and just go, which way do I go? You always want to be prepared. I know that, when you come to a fork in the road, they always say that, whichever fork you take, a part of you dies because you're making a choice. So you can't do everything in life. But I think the thing to do is just generally, first of all, stay healthy. Health is beyond everything. Family and friends are obviously very, very important. And just enjoy life. And I think that comes out in your personality as well. It shows when you meet people and everything else that you are genuinely happy. And I've been very lucky. I'm in a very good space. And, I think that's great for everyone. I hope everyone has the same experience.
And I know that you are very involved in how generations work together, live together. What tips would you give to people so they can thrive in a multi-generational environment?
Well, as you say, I used to co-head the Cities Generations Network in Hong Kong. And with every event we had, we tried to mix people up. It was a lot easier pre-COVID because our typical format was people would register, they'd listen to somebody for an hour, and then they'd stay and talk over canapes and some drinks. And even then, I remember one time when somebody met their boss's boss, and they wouldn't normally have talked to them at all, but both came back to me afterwards and says, wow, that was absolutely incredible. And I think that every company thinks in silos, whether it's profit and loss silo or any sort of silos. So any form of network should really break down those silos. And I think as well, we try and actually have youth committees. So you form a committee of people and you say, okay, the age limit is 35. You can't have anybody over 35. And what you can't do is cheat. You can't have somebody who chairs it who's basically 50, because the young people don't feel at home with that. So the best thing you can do is let them brainstorm and come up with ideas, because the best companies, the ones that listen to everyone, they always say the person you need to listen to is the person that doesn't speak up in the meetings. So, and there's a trendy sort of term, reverse mentoring. But I've done quite a lot of mentoring, and I've said to people, look, please help me as well. If I say something, I'm not into status or titles or whatever. So I'm very much in to try and mix people up. And I think the more we can mix people up, the more successful a company will be. So the more you can, have social events, have things where people change the way that they normally get involved on a day-to-day basis in projects and things like that. But definitely, I think that the main process is that everybody is open. The door is always open to listen to everyone. And we deliberately try and mix up the generations. We talk to the different generations. And I think that's the main thing. It's not, you get more senior and you only look up. As you get more senior, you should look down the whole time and constantly relate to the people you're working with.
We are at the end of the podcast, and I would like to close it with you giving all the listeners what are these top 3 qualities, skills, or approaches, whatever you decide, that helped you the most in your career and life.
I've always been driven. So that's one thing. I guess generally I've always been happy as well. So driven and happy is a good combination. I think beyond that, there's a lot of luck. So I don't know whether, I think driven and being happy is important. And I think inquisitive mind is the other thing. I think that the best way of networking is to reach out when you have a question. And there's nothing that people appreciate more than if there's a question which is well thought out, because you can literally approach anyone with a well thought out question. So, being driven, being happy, and being inquisitive, I think, are the 3 qualities you require.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode today. Please remember to review, rate, and subscribe when you have a chance. You can do that on your favorite podcast platform or go to our site, changeispossible.site. Thank you once again and have a great day.